He's not.
Okay.
He's not here. It's 3 a.m. for him, and I said, don't feel obliged to get up and come along to be at our meeting at 3 a.m. in Bangladesh. Like, do not do that. So
Yeah, no, he does that occasionally, and I try to warn him not to do that. So, but he's
hello, Mel.
Hello there. How are we? I'm just trying to put some light on.
Mel.
Good morning.
Yes, I recognise you now. It's just I see so many names on things that I see the faces and I recognise the faces, but I don't necessarily recognise the name. And when Joost was saying, "Oh yeah, Mel would be a good one to talk to," I'm like, but now I've seen you, I know who it is. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. It's a beautiful sunny day here in New Zealand. So yeah, all good.
Excellent. Well, lovely to have you on board. And Neil, we've got video with you and audio now, so welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Joan. Good to be here.
Excellent.
Good day. Hello, Gail. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Neil.
Hey, Neil.
And Laura, I'm assuming is there somewhere. Here we go. Tim's here. I'll just let him in. So I was just saying, just so that you know, I'm doing the tech and everything today because our lovely support people are in the worst possible time zone for trying to connect with the US at the same time. So you're going to have to bear with me as I do the tech, facilitate the session, do the recording, do all of those things at the same time.
So Joe, while they're coming in, shall we all put our LinkedIn in the chat?
Yes, please. Pop your LinkedIn details if you're keen to connect, which I'm assuming because you're here, you would like to connect with others. Please pop your LinkedIn details in the chat and enable people to, because that's part of the purpose of this community, is to enable collaborations. Welcome, Simon. Good to see you here, Simon.
Hey, Joe.
And we've got Jen. Hello, Jen. We've got Cherie, Tim, and I don't know who IMCNZ is, but I'm assuming, is that Rebecca? IMCNZ?
Sorry, no, it's Jackie Hamer. I just need to change my name because it's logged me in.
Hello, Jackie.
Hi.
I'll just give it a couple more minutes. So yes, as I was saying, as people were coming in, I'm doing the tech and everything today. So if I have to take an extra second or two, you'll just have to hopefully just have a little bit of patience with me today. Our tech people who normally do this are in Bangladesh, and this time for us to all to get together with Ed as well is very tricky for them because it's 3 a.m. in the morning for them. So I've got to keep an eye on a few windows as we're talking here. So please pop your details into the chat and that way people can connect with you as well. We got Tim joining us now. Tim Pilbro, Tim Bishop. Hello, guys. The Tims.
Hello.
Hello, Tim. Good to see you.
Hi. Good to see
Alex.
you.
Good to see you too.
I might be dropping out a bit. I'm about to get on a train and we're going to go through a tunnel, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to stay on the whole time. But
that's all right. And just so you know, we are recording the session, so if for some reason you do drop out, it will be available on the community. If you haven't already joined the community, I've popped the QR code up in the corner there so you can join, and that will keep you up to date with invitations to this session as well. So that invite, you will get it in your calendar before. You won't have to be looking for it as we come along. Okay, we might actually kick off. I know we're just beyond the top of the hour, but thank you everyone. And we have Ed here for those. everyone should probably know Ed, except maybe Simon. I welcome Simon. Simon's someone who worked with me over the years, and he's coming along to get to know about this stuff too. Thank you for coming, Simon. This community is very much about learning how to improve collaboration. Obviously, we're using strategic doing as our way of doing that, and we have the founder and the brains behind strategic doing here with us, Ed, who is in the US, and it's very graciously joins us at this time of the day, which I think is what, 6 p.m. or might be later your time.
No, it's good. It's good. Very good time. But I can go later too. This is important to me. So however way you want to switch this, if you want to, that'd be fine.
No, that's terrific. Thank you, Ed. And today we've actually got a few fun things we're going to do. Let me just keep letting people in. So as I was saying, for people who are coming in, please pop your LinkedIn details if you'd like to connect with others in the group in the chat. These sessions are interactive, but it is up to you how much you want to interact with the group. So if you would prefer to just sit and listen and not actually participate, that's up to you. But obviously you get the more out of it. I get more out of it the more you interact as well. And we would like to help you grow your connections as we go. And so we have a couple of things today. We've got some speakers. We've got a couple of panelists that are going to talk to you a little bit about their experiences in applying strategic doing and some of the challenges that they've had in their environment, and answer a couple of other questions. We'd also like to, if you've got any questions for Ed, so please get them ready because Ed will be open to answering questions for you. And we're focusing today on conversations. That's the other thing we are going to be looking at. And our first little thing that we're going to do is we're going to just split into a few little breakout rooms for 5 minutes to enable people to have a little chat. And our topic to talk about today is best and worst conversations that you've had. Now, it's a funny thing. We don't often think about the conversations and the process that we have, but it's important when we are learning to collaborate and we're improving our collaboration skills is to work on these conversation skills. And so I'd like you to think about if you can think of things that stick to your mind, conversations, the best conversations that you have and the worst ones. What are the characteristics that you would think of when you actually think of those conversations? So I'm just going to, how many people have we got here? We've got 20. I'm just going to split you into 5 rooms. We'll just take 5 minutes to do that. Just 5 minutes. Introduce yourself. Don't worry about introducing too much about yourself. People will get to know you and learn about you. So just have a bit of a chat to each other about your best and worst. Share with each other your best and worst conversations. What were the things about them that made them good or bad? How did we go? I know it 5 minutes goes past very quickly. How did we go? Did you get cut off mid-conversation?
A little bit, yeah.
I know when we all start to have a bit of a chat and learn a little bit about each other, unfortunately, time gets away really quickly. We will enable you to have longer conversations in the future, but I'd like you to just to take a minute. I've just popped into the chat a link to our Zoom survey, where I'd just like you to note maybe just a word or two or a couple of words about what you found were the best or worst traits of good or bad conversations. I've popped that in again. It's in the chat. You can click on that. You should be able to bring that up. And I'm just navigating multiple windows here. Let me get rid of that one. There it is. Oh, no, it is that one there. Let's see. If you could just pop that in, I might be able to show the results as we go. What did people think? But let's start with the worst conversations. What happens in the worst conversations? Anyone have any thoughts about what were the worst? Anyone like to share with the rest of the room your worst conversations?
Yeah, let me jump in on that. I mean, I think part of it, and I took this from Belle. We were just talking at the end. You know, when conversations are designed or are where the power differential is part of the conversation to maintain the power differentials. And I may be misinterpreting what she was saying, but to me, that's the worst conversations are when my partner in the conversation is really trying to exercise power over me, you know, and I've had several of those bad conversations. So I think you know it's really a it's a power differential, and yeah. So those are bad those are bad conversations for me.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I don't think they're a positive conversation for anyone where anyone's doing that. Any other thoughts from people? What other, if there's any key characteristics? Waiting to respond, I hear. Simon, waiting to respond. What do you mean by that? Oh, you're on mute.
Forget Zoom does the double mute. Yeah, it's when the person's not listening to anything you're saying; they're just waiting to respond. Like
Right.
you know, you've said it's like yes. Oh, you stopped. Oh, okay. Now the thing that's in my head, I'm going to say it, regardless of whatever you just were babbling on about.
Exactly. Yes. So they haven't heard a word you've said, and they're just in it to speak. So they like their own voice. Yes. Anyone else? I'll just take one more.
I'm happy to chip in. Sorry, I haven't figured out how to raise my hand up.
Oh, Belle. Yes.
So I was reading some of the blog post that Strategic Doing sent out yesterday, and that was thought-provoking. And I think in that post, it highlighted, I think as Ed was saying, you know, using the position power, using the position power rather than evaluating the merit of the idea, rather than making a rational decision based on the merit of the idea, or even having that conversation. Seeing individual egos come into play rather than trying to find the best outcome where there is a very misaligned objectives. Yeah, those are the things I feel very commonly seen in the workplace.
So yeah, so egos being the predominant element in the conversation rather than the content or the idea that's being discussed. Thank you, Belle. That's excellent. And I think Cherie, did I see you put your hand up? Yeah. Yes, Cherie.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I mentioned coming in with a bias to the conversation or an expectation. I mentioned that I used to do outdoor ed, and I worked for the U.S. military in my past life, and the assumption that I just didn't know what I was doing, or was just a little girl. What would I know about outdoor stuff when I'd already been in the field for many years and often could outdo pretty much every soldier that I came across. But so just, yeah, it was just disheartening when you come in, you just get that automatic assumption like, oh, I can outdo you. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, cool. You do it your way and we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, they're disempowering, those sorts of conversations, aren't they? So disheartening, yes, but they've made that assumption, and they've taken any power from you from that conversation as well. So no, that's great, Cherie. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a terrific example. So with that as the basis of the worst conversations, what about positive conversations? What have been the best conversations that you've had? What are the characteristics of a good conversation? How do you feel from having a good conversation too? So I'm sure that they make you feel engaged, empowered, etc. So what are the good characteristics? Janice? Janice, can you hear me? I don't know, Janice, you might be on mute. You might be talking and we can't hear you. I can't unmute. Let me see if I can ask you to unmute. Oh no, Janice, can you put it in the chat? I'll read it out for you. While Janice is doing that, has anyone else got something that they'd add about the best conversations? Yes, Rebecca.
I think it's just basically when people are really open and they're open to having a discussion. I think, with the worst ones, it's people can be closed off and their body language is really closed off, but with the open ones, people are normally quite open, their body language is open, they're wanting to kind of collaborate with you and to have that discussion, which is really good. Yeah.
Openness, I love that. Yes, and it's not just open mind, but having the physical presence. The physicality is also showing that same openness, which, yeah, terrific. Thank you, Rebecca. Now let's see what Janice had said. A good conversation is one where there is a lot more listening and sometimes less talk. So that's a good point. So they're thoughtful and listening to what other people have to say. Terrific. Got Martin here has said being heard and understood. So engagement. Connection. I think that is part of that engagement. I think humans fundamentally, we all want to connect with others. So that's a really important part of the conversation. And both talking and listening equally. So equality in the equity of voice in the conversation. Terrific point, Sarah. I think they're all things that we try to aspire to when we have our conversations as well in our process. And when we bring people together to run a strategic doing session and our collaborations, that's what we're aiming for. So they're all really good points. And thank you for sharing those. And one more. Good body language, and you feel like, so Gail, you feel like you're moving to your shared purpose, optimistic and energizing. Yes, terrific. Thanks, Gail. So what we're going to do now is move on to the main part of our conversation, which is to talk today to a couple of people in the region who have applied strategic doing. And we're very lucky to have a couple of these people with us now, although I think we might have lost one of our speakers because I know she had to take an urgent phone call, but we do have Mel here, Melanie Jones. Thank you for joining us, Mel. We've also got Gail Dallaston from the Shady Lanes project. And if Jenny does pop back in, I know, as I said, she had to take a call, Jenny McGee. They're here to talk a little bit about their experiences, but this is an open conversation. So please feel free to put your hand up and also ask any questions as we go along, but please just follow the protocol of popping your hand up so I can make sure that you're engaged properly. First of all, we might just let each of these people just provide a little bit of an introduction. So we might start with Mel. It'd be great to hear just a little bit about yourself, Mel, and where you've applied. What's your environment? What's the context for where you've applied strategic doing?
Cool. Kia ora tātou. Ko Mel Jones aho. I'm Mel Jones, and I work in local government in the Waitaki district, which is part of the Otago region in the South Island of New Zealand. So I head up a very small ED team here. There's only 2.3 people. And we're a rural district with about 24,000 people. So that's the sort of the context that we've been operating in. It was introduced to strategic doing December 2022. Subsequently did my practitioner training and have now been applying it in some ED projects as in our community.
Terrific.
No, I won't say too much.
No, that's terrific. Thank you, Mel. And I think that's a really good example. So local government is one of the areas I think that it's a very good place to try and use strategic doing and to actually to enable better collaboration. So thank you for sharing that. Gail, let's tell us a little bit about yourself and the Shady Lanes project.
Okay. Well, Shady Lanes is about planning on verges, and I use verges because they're a neutral space. They're a safe space, which is what you want with strategic doing. They're also a space that brings everybody together in different disciplines, different people, all on an equal footing. So I had this project. The thing we want to do is to green them out, but in the process, build those relationships between people. The bit that I was missing was managing the conversations, and that's how I came across Ed and strategic doing. So that was why I'm still here. It's all about conversations. So I've used that in Shady Lanes, but I've also then gone on to use that to expand the network. So we've now got a network with several nodes, interlinking networks, and I use that for each one of them, bringing together community members, people with from many disciplines, from active transport to planning to heat, urban heat, all of those ones all connect on this one issue. So to me, it's the classroom for learning strategic doing.
Yeah. Well, it's and that's sort of a local government-y sort of, or is this state? How would you position it, Gail?
It's absolutely everything. We talk to councils because they do the policies. Being part of a state government health department on urban heat, how do we increase shade in our cities? And federal government's involved because it includes transport and how we design our streets. It really does pull everybody in. The streets are our connectors.
Yes, terrific. And so a question for both of you to sort of think about, and I think one of the first things that people want to know a little bit about is what are the challenges that you have in applying? Well, I think there's lots of challenges, for example, in getting anyone to collaborate. But what are the challenges specifically that you found in using it in your context? How have you what challenges have you had, and how have you used strategic doing to overcome them, or how have you overcome those challenges? So Mel, we might go to you first.
Yeah, so we used strategic doing for a workshop last December, and we decided to be quite ambitious and run 5 projects at the same time. And it was all focused on how do we revitalise our CBD. So the main township here is Oamaru. There's about 12,000 people, so we're quite small, and a very conservative, risk-averse population. So we brought in a number of stakeholders and we divvied them up into groups. And the cool thing was, as we all know, within a couple of hours, they'd all come up with Pathfinder projects. What has been really interesting is to see how those Pathfinder projects have evolved over the months. And they're all, one of them has finished, but the other 4 are all still live with incredible vibrancy and enthusiasm within the groups. So what's worked well is people seeing that when you share assets and learnings and skills and resources, you can actually move forward and you can do things that you couldn't do on your own. Some of the challenges is because people are new to the whole discipline, how do you keep the Pathfinder project small enough so you do keep that momentum going and you get some quick wins and you can build on those quick wins? And we don't have yet enough practitioners in the district to help facilitate to keep on those guidelines. We've also found you do need a little bit of money, to actually make things happen. And because council was sort of overseeing this whole initiative, it's very easy for people to default on, well, council needs to pay for everything. So helping people get that they need to think differently around how they raise money, which is quite tricky because a number of council officers were involved in the projects, and actually to get access to grants and things, you often have to be like a charitable trust. So that, that whole monetary bit has been quite a tricky thing. So I'd love to hear from Ed and others what some of the learnings are there. Another piece, which I think is really interesting within the Kiwi environment, is we have great respect for our indigenous people, and the Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview is really important and is something that we want to integrate in everything that we do. To bring Māori to the table and say to them, we want to, in 2 hours, have an action plan and have actions that we're all going to sign up to, is actually quite challenging because the whole cultural context is you build relationships, and relationships take time, and you don't start to ask people to commit to things until you've built those relationships. So that's a really interesting nuance for us here as we start to think through how do we localize strategic doing and make sure that we're bringing all members in our community on board. So I'll maybe pause there. Thank you.
No, they're great examples, actually. I don't know, Ed, I saw you nodding through that, Ed, but if you had any sort of thoughts there for Mel as well as we're going.
Well, one of the things I've learned over the years of doing this is, and I try to share this, is, when in doubt, go slower. It seems counterintuitive, but it goes to Mel's last point, which is you're really building relational capital or relationships. And the mistakes I've made are when I go too fast, because when you build the relationships, you will go fast. It'll happen because, things, you build the level of trust that enables you to spot opportunities and do things together and all those things. But that takes time. So I do think it's very important to slow down, especially at the beginning. Yeah, I think that's important, not to go too fast. Yeah.
And I think that's what you were saying there, Ed, about things will naturally speed up. So when that trust is established, that will then create momentum. So yeah, terrific point. And thank you, Mel, for sharing that. Gail, I don't know what challenge, I know you've had a few challenges. I've heard some of the stories that you've shared. I sort of sigh at some of the difficulties that quite contentious space verges turn out to be, which I would never have thought that the verges are such a problematic area. But yes, what thoughts do you have about this?
It's problematic, but that's also why it's such an opportunity, and that's part of the going slow and building the relationships. The first relationship is between a resident and a council. And that's a really, really important one, because it often starts with the us and them. Council ought to do this, and council don't trust residents not to do stupid things. And so building that relationship of learning to respect and listen and understand why people do what they do or say what they say, and learning to work together is the first lesson, and that takes a long time. It's quite right. You go slow, and there's loads of conversations in there taking people through it, because it mixes people. You have people standing on the verge. We've had working bees where somebody was standing beside a man saying, slagging off the council about their street trees. Turned out that person was a council arborist who very quietly and politely sort of put their view. And it was because they'd met as equals they will listen to. So it's that relationship is the key, and that's where the timing doesn't matter. It takes as long as it takes. But once you've got that, it falls into place. I mean, in this last week, we have put together a new bush care group with the council, because we had all the ducks in the row, all the pieces were there, the network was there, we knew each other. So when the council says, we want to do this project, have you got someone who can be the group leader and whatnot? We just put all the pieces together. It was like magic. But that's only because of all that groundwork beforehand.
Yeah.
It's not magic, it's actual hard work. But yes, it seems like magic, doesn't it, when it actually works. So how did you ladies manage to make it start to happen? Like I know, Gail, you're sort of instrumental in actually driving this, but I know in organisations it can be hard to actually get them to try something different. Mel, let's start with you. How did you get people to let's just try this thing out? Let's try some strategic doing.
Yeah, no, good question. I think it helped that I had done the workshop training, and one of my projects, was that we ended up with it running an event, and the chief exec and a number of the council officers had all come to that event, which was incredibly successful and exciting and stimulating, and brought some new thinking on the table. And to be able to talk to them and share the conversations around how we got there and the role of strategic doing and doing that was really helpful. I think if you want to bring your organization with you, you do need to start bottom up and start small, and bring people with you, and just get a few people involved in a project. We were fortunate because while I was doing the workshop training, another consultant was also doing it, and she chose to do a project within council on the arts and culture with the arts and culture team, and that ended up getting front page coverage in our newspaper, and it got fantastic PR within council. And what was magic was, the team that was formed, one of the least well-known members, who would have been just like an admin person and didn't seem to be, wasn't clearly the non-hierarchical nature, that's what I'm trying to say, of the project, brought suddenly new skills to the table, and we were able to brought new assets. And as a result, the organization was able to see, gosh, we've got these assets within our organization that we're not necessarily unlocking, and there's not a lot more potential there. And once you've got a couple of projects like that and you get that word of mouth internally, it then made it very easy. Myself and Andrea, who was the other consultant, we then went to the executive lead team and then just said, let's talk you through strategic doing, let's talk you through the approach. Now, who else in council would like to be involved in doing the training? So have some quick wins in council, talk about it, get the other council in our case to talk about the benefits, and then you have this sort of cascade effect. So at the moment, we've got huge positivity towards strategic doing, but we haven't yet, taken it out to sort of rolling it out bigger, because we've got a whole transformation project going on at the moment. So that's sort of disrupting things a bit, but it's definitely people are hearing others talking about the value, and that really helps.
Yeah, and I think that you've had those early wins actually. Yeah. As you said, you've set off sort of light bulbs for people about the value of it, and that has given you a little bit of the doors just opened a crack so that you can let people in. Gail, well, what about you? How have you introduced it, and how successful has that been?
I think the key to it has been finding allies within organisations. You don't build trust and relationship with an organisation, you do it with a person. And you'll find people within organisations who want what you want, and ways that you can work together. And for them often I've got a lot more freedom than they have, because if you work in a council or another any hierarchical organisation, you've got all sorts of things restricting what you can do, what you can say, whereas I've got the freedom to do whatever I want to do. And if you're working together, it really makes a big difference. It means I can go to them if I want to try something. They can sort of and they can give me that feedback on what the problems are, what hurdles there are. So I think that's really important to have people with different positions within your team. If you're all in the same organisation, it must be harder to have that creativity there, that extra bit, and to build those alliances, it means you've got to reach out and find the people. I'm really good at gate crashing meetings where I'm not supposed to be there.
Of that, Gail. You don't, and the thing is, you do it so gently. It's beautiful. I love some of that thinking though, and diversity is definitely, I think, critical. It's certainly critical for creativity, but I think diversity is needed just to be able to see different perspectives of the same challenge. I know Ed has just popped something in here about the insights that you gained last week. Ed, do you want to just elaborate on that we start at the edge and the center moves to the edge as small wins on the edge accumulate?
Yeah. So I was reading, there's a guy named John Seeley Brown, who's a very, very smart guy. He was head of Xerox PARC, chief scientist. And for I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I was going back through his readings. I've accumulated a bunch of his papers. And he, in one was buried, which was, to move an organization, you start at the edge and you get a lot of excitement going at the edge, and actually the center moves toward the edge. You don't try to change the edge, change the center, excuse me. You don't do a frontal assault on the center. Now, if I had learned that 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I would have saved myself some. But I think that's so true. When I read that, I thought, that's really smart. That's because everything, at Purdue, we started on the edge, as you build credibility around this, as Mel is talking about, I think what happens is that the center starts to move toward the edge, which is a little counterintuitive, but I think that's what happens.
It's a really interesting thing. It might be the lesson for today is about starting at the edge, that really starting at the edge and moving towards the center is how you make that progress. Mel, you've got your hand up there.
Yes, I was just going to build on what Ed said, because one of the things we're doing with this CBD revitalization project, as we're calling it, we've got the 5 projects, we're treating them all as pilots. So because that takes away a lot of the risks and nervousness and makes it easier for us to talk about it. Because if you start saying we're doing major changes, people get, start freaking out. But if you say, well, we're just going to pilot, we're going to get your views and test and learn and iterate as we go, then that seems to be a really nice way to approach it. And I'm wondering, how does that link in with starting at the edges and moving in? Is that a way that you might do that?
Well, to me, that's the whole idea of Pathfinder projects, is that, we're trying to find our way to a future we can't totally see, but we want to go in that direction. There's no path that's been marked for us yet. I mean, somebody's never, these are challenges nobody's ever solved before. So the idea, the metaphor of guides, being on a trail, of Pathfinder projects, of guideposts, this is very intentional language that we developed in order to reinforce the metaphor that we're on this journey together. And there's some people who have, like yourself and Gail, who have really kind of mastered some of the insights about how to do this, how to guide people. And that's really what I think we need to do. And that's the value of these sessions to me, is that these are safe spaces where we can all kind of learn together about things that this is hard to do. I talk about it, it's like molecular biology. My wife was a molecular biologist, and they deal, a cancer researcher, and they deal with networks they can't see. You can't see the cellular level below the cellular. So they imagine what these things are like, and they draw pictures about them. And that's really what we're trying to do. When we talk about workforce systems or community systems, or you don't touch these things. These are all relational networks. They're complex, adaptive human systems. And we're trying to design and guide them toward better future for our kids and our grandkids. So it's not easy work, but it can be a lot of fun. It can be very rewarding, but that's why I think these kind of peer learning environments are really important, because I learn something new every day. And I will say that today we were talking about a network that we're building, a manufacturing network in Northeast Ohio. And both Gail and Mel can give guidance to some of the folks about how they communicate, because the core team is communicating. They're very well intentioned. They're trying to do the best, but they're still sort of stuck in that hierarchical structure mindset. We need your help. Please help us. Well, when you say we need your help, you're automatically kind of in this vertical conversation, and so don't ask for help. Just say, what could we do together? Like you did, and so these are things that we all have to be aware of, because anyway, it's a fascinating area. I should stop.
Oh no, look, and I think that's pertinent though, exactly, Ed, to what we're talking about, because the language that we use in these conversations is really important. And we'll talk more about language in these sessions as we go forward. But the words that we use, the way that we approach these conversations that we're having, the dialogue, is essential to how we make those collaborations happen. Martin.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Ed. For example, innovation do not come with titles. You have to bring people in and create these vertical conversations. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just verbal language. I mean, one of the things that we learned and again, I attribute my wife to this, is the importance when you're dealing in this level of complexity. It's way beyond rocket science. It's harder. It's harder than rocket science. That you need a visual language. You need a visual language, and because you have to imagine what an ecosystem looks like. What is an ecosystem? Well, okay, let's think about it this way. And so you develop this, and we were very intentional about developing a visual language for strategic doing, because and that's where Joe and I connected, because she's very, very good at developing visual language. I think that's really critical. If I could do one more point, I want to jump into Gail's point. Gail, what you said about finding the people in the organizations, that is so critical. That was one of the first, my mentor at Purdue was insistent on us not using the language of organization. Oh, we can't collaborate with Indiana University because we've tried that before. And he just said, you're thinking at the wrong level. There is no Indiana University. Indiana University is a group of people. So find the people in the organization. And so, when you hear somebody saying, oh, well, council can't do this, they're not thinking in a clear enough or precise enough level to be actionable to change anything, I mean, because the council is an abstraction still. I mean, it's got a legal form. I got it. But it's, the council, it's people. Yeah, so I wanted to shout that out.
That's excellent. Yeah, you've got to find the right people and at the right time to be able to make that thing happen. So building that relationship of trust with the right people is absolutely critical. I know that there's probably, Martin will take one more question. And I'm just looking at the time. Time flies so quickly, unfortunately. We'll take one more question because I do want to give you an opportunity to have just a quick chat, and we have some housekeeping and people have to go to work. So I'm mindful of keeping you all on track. Martin.
Yeah, I'm thinking that culture must have a place in this company culture and values. I think it has to start there. What do you think?
Ed, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know culture definitely is an element, but I think you don't, from my perspective, and Ed, you can add your thoughts. Culture for me can be done at an individual level. Culture is again another one of these constructs with normative. There's norms that we have, etc. But if you approach people on a one-to-one basis, you change at the little level, at the individual level, and that starts to spread out. Well, that's my experience. Ed, what are your thoughts on that?
So we run into this a lot, and so we define, at least I define culture very clearly or very specifically. It may not line up with a lot of anthropology, but it's patterns of thinking, patterns of behaving, and patterns of doing work together. And so you don't really change a culture, because a culture is an emergent quality of underlying patterns of thinking, behaving, and doing. And so what you're doing with strategic doing is very intentionally introducing new ways of thinking, behaving, and doing. And we do this primarily through the door of behaving. So this is one of the ways in which we do this at a workshop, which is it's a structured workshop. It's not, it's very well thought out. Good ones are. And people behave their way into new ways of thinking and working together. And so this is what scholars call positive deviance, but you don't have to know that. But I mean, I think you create experiences for people so that they start behaving, listening to one another. What is it like to listen to one another? What is it like to be respectful? And you're making a lot of the behavior that we see that keeps us stuck is just bad learned behavior. It's I don't think people are bad people. I just think they've learned bad habits, and so that's what strategic doing tries to address. Yeah.
That's terrific. And I know you've got an agreement from our anthropologist online, Tim, that culture works for him. So well done. And we've got a comment there from Belle as well. Thank you for providing that to Belle. I'm going to just push us along because we are getting close to the top of the hour. And what I'm going to do is, for people who can stay on and have a conversation, I'll do that at the end. Normally I would do that now, but what I'll do is just a little bit of housekeeping. So for people who have to leave at the top of the hour, they can. Thank you to our panelists. I think that was an excellent conversation. I really appreciate your input and thinking around these things, because I think it's really important to share with others how some of these practical issues in applying this thinking and how you've dealt with them. If people have additional questions that you would like, please put them in the chat, and these may have prompted some questions. I will work with Ed to get these put onto the community, so answers to some of that, and also feel free to add your own responses in your own experiences to address any questions that pop up as well. So I just wanted to let everyone know, just to remind you, that there is a one-day strategic doing intensive practitioner training in Sydney. We're planning to run it on the 9th of October. It's an intensive because what we do is we simulate a workshop. We use the game board that I've created that you can take away at the end of the day, and it allows you to practice actually running a workshop with other people who are learning. So it's a completely safe environment. So if you'd like to have more information about that, you'll see that on our site. Here are the links. So we've got the strategic doing website, but we've also got where our community is. So jump on there. This will also be recorded each week. We will put that on there. if you're connected in our Australasia community, you will get the invite for this meeting for each session. Upcoming things. Whoops, let's jumped ahead. Please, if you would like to join the core team, if you really want to be involved as well with like the running and so forth, please put your hand up and let me know. I'm more than happy to have other people. I'm here as a facilitator, but if you have a passion and you want to be part of the core team, reach out and let me know. There's a number of other strategic doing events and activities that are happening. What I will do is I will post these in a second in the chat. So there's the Fellows program, which we have starting on the 2nd of October. There's another more traditional strategic doing practitioners training in September, which is online, I think, Ed, is that correct? The ones that are in September. There's an essentials training at the end of August. And there's a session on asking the right question training. Now, I'm actually going to, at our next workshop here, I'm going to talk to you about being able to identify the right challenge. So that will lead to that as well. How do you actually identify that and define the right challenge? So make sure that you come along for the next session and we will talk more about that. So the next hub session will be on the 26th of September, same time. We are looking at potentially merging this with the Southeast Asia hub, but it would mean moving it to probably about midday. I would just like a show of hands, like literally a physical show of hands of people who would like it to be at midday. If anyone prefers this time, keep your hand down. But if you'd like it to be at midday, if you could just pop your hand up.
I don't mind.
If you're or you don't care. Okay. All right. Because we might keep it as split. But if I would like to see if we can merge the two, because I think the collaboration would be good with the broader southeast region. Okay, now I know for those who have to leave, thank you for coming today. I'm just going to step back, and for those who can stay, we're going to split up into breakout groups, and we'll have a little conversation based on what we've talked about today. Is how do you promote positive conversations in your team meetings, your groups, your workshops? How do you actually make that happen? And Gail, I'll just check, have you got a question or is your hand still just up from the previous thing? It might be, yeah, cool. So for those of you who'd like to depart, if you head off now, otherwise I'll pop you into meeting rooms and you can have a chat about this. Ed and I will also stay online after the session. So if you would like to ask any questions one-on-one, we'll be here. But we'll just take 5 minutes to have a chat. Let me have a look at the breakout rooms. We might just split into 2 breakout rooms this time. Let me move these. Actually, we might, split into 2. Where's the room 4? 4, there we go. We'll just take 5 minutes to have a conversation about promoting positive conversations.